topic is off limits. We want to answer your questions about business and life and everything in between. Send your questions to ask@beckandliz.com. That's ask@beckandliz.com. Question for today, Elizabeth, actually stems from a conversation we had with Dr. John Hayes from the Titus Center for Franchising. And it was this idea of saying yes. So my question is, how do we know when we should say yes to something? Why do we not say yes to certain things? I guess it's kind of a two-part question. So let me put it to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I had a similar experience that John had in terms of saying yes. I kind of had a year of yes one year. And I think one of the reasons we don't say yes is fear. It's fear and it's familiarity. We like to be in familiar situations where we feel like we know what we're doing. And if you say yes to something outside of that, then you have the possibility of failure. So that's a scary thing for a lot of people. And I think, listening to that little inner voice, like why should you say yes? I agreed to write a script for a pageant. This was my year of yes. I was freelancing with a company and her family runs a pageant. And I think I've talked about it before. I said yes to writing the script to build that relationship with her. And that's where I met the man who published my book. He was the essay judge. He walked up and said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a writer." And "Well, what are you writing?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of working on this book about my online dating and divorce." And he's like, "Well, I'm a book publisher. After this pageant's over, let's have lunch and I'll read it." And within a couple of months, I had a book on Amazon. And since saying yes to that, have built very strong relationships and volunteered in ways that I'm not a pageant girl, wasn't my thing. So I think when you do that, when you have that little inkling, like maybe I should say yes to this, but then you hold back because you're like, but what if it doesn't work out? You should just say yes. And it's not always going to work out, but you're going to have an experience that you either learn from or benefit from, if it works out. And the learning is clearly a benefit too. But what do you think? What's your take on that?
I think I agree with you that it is fear that stops us from saying yes, even when we get a strong intuition that says, here, this door is opening. It's an unfamiliar door, but it feels like I'm supposed to go that, but things aren't lining up because the fear part is in the way. But I wonder if ego has something to do with, or this kind of identity that we see ourselves a certain way, right? And we sort of hold this picture, this identity of ourselves. And if we go into another direction, or we say yes to something that's unfamiliar or doesn't quite line up with the identity that we have of ourselves, that the fear is pretty big at that point, that if I go this direction, it's going to be counter the way that I identify myself, and that feels unsafe. Never mind, others see me or as this whatever identity it is, because I truly believe that a lot of our decisions are to hold ourselves within a particular identity that we have. In neurolinguistics, we basically call it a prime concern, that we deliberately do everything possible to hold on to who I think I am, right? And that includes holding on to my victimization or my weaknesses and my insecurities, because that's how I identify myself. I think we don't say yes sometimes out of, I'm calling it ego, but maybe the word is identity. It's holding on to our identity.
Well, and not only that, to further your point, because I know a lot of victims in my life, to take responsibility and move on and make different choices makes it your responsibility. Then you can't be the victim because you've made So to get yourself to that point, you have to own it. And that's hard. I had to do that after my divorce. I've had this talk with my kids. Like, there was a minute where I remember thinking I could either be angry for the rest of my life and no one would blame me. It was not a fun divorce. But how was that going to impact me and my kids going forward? I could either be angry and hold on to it and be mad and be a victim, or I could say from this moment forward, it's my responsibility and whatever happens to me is on me. Talk about a scary decision. But I knew that I didn't want to raise victims. I wanted to raise people who took responsibility for where they were, even if it wasn't necessarily their fault in how they arrived there. I think that's a hard thing for people to overcome when it's not your fault, when something happens to you. It's easy to stay in that victim mode, and it's safer because then you don't take the risk of trying to change it.
It's an identity that I'm a victim. This thing happened to me, and therefore the rest of my life isn't going to work. I have an example consistent with what you were just talking about of someone who's been in a business for 8 years and has never made money. And part of me goes, hello, maybe it's time to go into a different business, sell that business, go another direction. This person is absolutely miserable. Doesn't even enjoy the business anymore. It's not making money. It's kind of good money after bad money, but refuses to close the business and do something else. And I absolutely believe it's this identity that I am a owner of such and such business, and the world knows me that way. I see myself that way, and an unwillingness to say, oops, that didn't work. Plan B. Let's go do something differently. That the identity is holding on to something, even though that thing is a sinking ship. I'm gonna hold on to it.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating phenomenon, and
it is. It's a crazy phenomenon. And I think we want to probably make a note to take this conversation further at a later date, because it really is something in business and in life that we frequently get stuck in. And John was so beautiful in how he just trusted and said yes to everything. And again, it went the right direction. And the minute it no longer was working, another door opened. His eyes were open because he had faith.
Well, and here's what I want to ask him next time he comes back. I'm going to make this note too. When has it not worked out? Did he just leave those experiences out, or has he just had this constant faith that it always did and so it did? Or how does he cope when he has to make that shift because it's not exactly what he thought or wanted? Just a little segment.
Exactly. We're going to have him back and ask him. He did talk about not financially things weren't working and having to look for the next door, but he didn't wait till it was so painful that he had no choice. He was already prepped and ready to see doors open, but we're going to have to ask him. Yeah. In the meantime, thank you everyone for joining us today, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. This is Beck and Liz signing off and wishing you another purpose-filled and profitable week.